What's happening, everyone? My partner's Ian's keeping it real. What's happening, everyone? And welcome to El Chile Boxing Talk. Glad that you all are here, man. And we got such an original lineup. Run PMC's not here, man, but we got George with Off the Ropes Boxing and MMA. Sean Gringo Hicks is back, right? And it has nothing to do with the fact that Charlo's off the hook. That's just pure coincidence. And we got my homie Nopal Buxianos in the house, and we're happy that you're all here, man. We're going to get into some boxing, dude. Lots of things to talk about, man. A lot of people are in early. El Capitan, thanks for showing up, man. Lee Groves, Writing Yogi, thank you guys so much. Nando, always in the house. And then JC was here first, I believe. Yep, yes, indeed. JC, thanks for joining us, man. Sonteo, you're here too, man. Thank you so much for being here. Well, dude, I got a little bit of echo. Cool. All right. Well, hey, welcome, man. Let's get right into it. I don't know if you guys have heard the news. I'm sure you have. I'm talking about the 5-time world champion, 4-division world champion. That's right. I'm talking about the undisputed 168-pound champion, moving up to light heavyweight to face Dimitri Bivol. Let's get into it, man. I want your guys' initial impressions. Like, this is some big news. We've been waiting to see what Canelo would do, and he's chosen Dimitri Bivol. So I want to know what you guys think about this particular fight, as well as the 3-fight deal. It looks like he's going to face Triple G afterwards, and then another fight in December, leading to $160 million for Canelo, the payday. So, Sean, welcome back, man. What do you think about this particular fight, man? What are your overall initial thoughts about this fight?
Yeah, first of all, great to be back, man. Thanks for everybody tuning in. Much appreciated, much love. And I'm excited. Right now, whether people like it or not, Canelo's the son. He's the big cash cow in boxing. And a lot of people are just kind of waiting, as he's called out recently, when he was interviewed, that people are waiting to see what he does to kind of make their maneuvers. And he's made a decision, not just for a 1-fight deal, but a multi-fight deal, which is great for us. And then another thing, I want to give him props from the standpoint of not just, like some my brother Manny would say, cherry picking a champion. Bivol's no joke. He's moving up. And another thing, showing growth, because I know a lot of people have called this out before. There's no rehydration clause. He's just going straight like a G, and he's going to go right at him. And that's a big deal. Like, people don't really think about it, but when you saw it at the press conference, there definitely is a height differential, a size differential. And, I believe this is going to be the first fight in like the last 8 fights where Canelo's actually fighting somebody younger than him as well, too. So shout out to Canelo on a lot of fronts. So I'm excited.
I think it's a very dangerous fight. Bivol, he stays just at the right distance to flick his jab, and we see that he doesn't throw hooks or anything till the other guy tries to lunge in. So, and he has really good movement. So, I gotta say that, I'm not even going to say it's a 50-50. I say it's a 45-55 either way. I think it's an extremely risky fight. Like I said, Bivol, he doesn't try to please the fans at all. He's just going to try to win, and that's it. He's not the kind of guy you can pressure to fight to go in there and brawl or anything like that. He's very disciplined. He's been trained like a robot to just do, the one thing to win, So I think it's a very risky fight, but that's the good part about this fight is, Canelo had options to fight other guys and possibly even for, more money or comparable money. But, he chose to take the biggest risk. Next to this one, I think the only other big risk was Beterbiev. But, he chose to go for the hardest fight first. He could have probably left this fight for last, but he chose to take it first. So, I think it's going to be a tall order. It's going to be a hard one.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they say, the boxing world was at a standstill to see exactly what Canelo's next move was going to be. This started back in January when Mike Coppinger said on ESPN that it was going to be Charlo. So boxing world went crazy. Everybody from YouTube to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, everybody was saying, Coppinger says it's Charlo. It's Charlo. Eddie Reynoso comes out a couple weeks later. shoots it down and says, no, it's not Charlo. We actually have, a couple other fighters of mine. Until we give you guys the word, there's nothing set in stone yet. And then we hear, hey, it might possibly be Charlo, but then Bivol's name was thrown out there as well, and as well with Better Biev. So here we are. This fight was announced less than a few days ago officially. We had the press conference today. As you see here, I mean, hats off to Canelo. I mean, it just shows his balls, man. And I didn't realize that until you just said it right now, Sean, was the rehydration clause. And that was, that was fire and fuel for like all the Canelo haters, like always, oh, wow, he's going to have a clause in there. We're not going to get a 100% Bivol. He's going to be weight drained. He's not going to be able to rehydrate at a certain class, at a certain weight. And he just knocked all that off the table and says, you know what, I want, again, a younger guy, the actual natural 175-pound fighter. And I agree, Nopal, this is a pretty dangerous fight, man. I do believe it is 50-50 because Bivol isn't a come forward fighter, so it's not like Canelo's going to be able to pick him off and counter him. He's got to. There's going to be boxing involved in this because we see Bivol can actually box really well. I think his footwork gets overlooked a little bit. He does have pretty decent footwork, so you're going to see a true big man in there use his size the way we would expect the big guy to use his size. But I'm excited for it. I'm sure we're all excited for it because even last year, if they said that he didn't fight Bivol, Better Biev, or Charlo, like nobody would be happy with it. And here it is. We got a Bivol fight in May 7th.
Hell yeah. I want to give a shout out to Knocked Out by Kenny who's showing up. SSC, thanks for joining us. Calix Boxing is in the house. And there's a couple good points here in the chat that I want to highlight. Writing Yogi says, Bivol's an interesting choice. Bivol's a technician aficionado. Canelo wins by changing his technique and adapting. But Bivol moves in micro moves. And to add to that, Lee Grove says, love this fight because Bivol is a technician and has a wonderful discipline to follow the blueprint from start to finish. Wonderful jabber who will test Canelo's brain power and patience. These are all great observations. Like, and I agree with a lot of what you guys said too. Like, I've always maintained that, and I've said this, Bivol would be the hardest challenge for Canelo when you look at the landscape. And I was not anticipating that Canelo would take this fight. And there's a good reason why I think that Bivol stands a very good chance at upsetting Canelo. One, I just think he's skilled in general. I think that he would beat everybody else in the Canelo lottery, except for possibly Better Biev. Like, I'd have to look at that one a bit more. But I also think that he would probably beat Better Biev. I think he's the best 175-pound champion. He's undefeated, and he doesn't have much of a resume. But when you watch film on him, like, man, you could see why, like, stylistically, like, this could be a nightmare for Canelo. The guy has, like you all were saying, man, he's just got very good range. He's effective with his jab. He's got decent speed. He can fight on the back foot. He's very good at moving around and punching on the way out. He's got stamina for 12 rounds. And he's a solid puncher. I wouldn't consider him like a knockout artist or anything like that, but he's got like respectable power. But I have a lot of respect for Bivol. I think he's a very clean fighter. So I think we're going to see a really great fight where the ref just won't even be involved, in my opinion. The judges, that's another story. But I'm telling you, it's just going to be a clean fight. Bivol, he doesn't get dirty. Sometimes he might test a guy a little bit, but I mean, he's not going to want to try that with Canelo, in my opinion. I mean, because, if you get dirty with Canelo, like, Canelo will probably be looking to land like one beautiful justified shot to the huevos, even this fight out, slow Bivol down a little bit. On top of that, I think you should go in and get an 18 by 18 foot ring because he can. That's what I think. And, Bivol's fought in small rings before, so I say, what the hell? Go for it. But, those are a lot of my initial thoughts on this particular fight. Also, shout out to Bivol's trainer, man. I don't know what that guy's saying, but I love hearing him in the corner. He's got a lot of personality when he's dictating what to do. So this is a damn good matchup. And I'll tell you this, like, if Canelo does take the loss, he can still just go back to 168 pounds and reign as the undisputed champion. He's still the undisputed champion at 168 pounds, and, he's not going to get knocked out. So we'll see what happens, man. Another thing I wanted to point out, too, is that this is the closest odds that there's been for a Canelo fight since Kovalev, right? Look, the odds were super wide for Billy Joe versus Plant, 8-1, 9-1, respectively. And Dimitri Bivol is a 3-1 underdog. And then if you bet money on Saul Canelo Alvarez, he's a negative 450. Does anybody have any final thoughts on this before we move on to the next subject?
Sometimes with the betting odds, I wanted to say, they could be a little deceiving. I think there was something like that with Joshua and and Usyk. Nevertheless, I mean, we saw what happened, you know.
No, definitely. I just wanted to add real quick, again, not trying to be negative, Nancy. Shout out to Nancy. She's not negative at all. She's great. We love her. But are you guys concerned at all because of the current climate, because Bivol's nationality being Russian? I mean, I've already read an article from Boxing 24/7 saying that there may be some issues and pushback because the DAZN platform pushes a lot of their, campaigning out now in Europe. And could there be some negative, blowback from the standpoint that they're marketing a Russian fighter? Not that he has anything to do with the campaign that's going on and the invasion that they're doing into Ukraine, but I mean, it's the world we live in. Some people may take offense to it. The fact that they're pushing and because they've already canceled so many different events, the World Cup, so many huge events have canceled, and Canelo is boxing at this point. It's a huge event. Anything he's attached to, and they're gonna really market it up big time. Are you guys concerned from that standpoint that maybe there could be some issues, not from the standpoint of fans, but from the standpoint of just people on the outside looking in, like, what are y'all doing?
Or like the fight not happening, you mean?
Yeah. Just like too much pressure. Like anybody but this guy. We can't support Russia on any level. It seems kind of like far-fetched, but when I read more about it, it does seem like there's some possibility there could be that concern. Not saying that I want that. If anybody's sensing an undertone, not at all. I mean, I want to see Canelo fight, but it's a reality. It's a world.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility, Gringo, that might happen. As far as being concerned, I don't know, man. I'm not sure if they could just out of nowhere say that, not let the fight happen, because they already had said that certain sanctioning bodies weren't going to sanction any fighters from Russia. But I think that they went ahead already and gave the go-ahead to this fight being from the WBA. But there's always that possibility.
Yeah, that's a tough one, really, to say, man. Us, of course, boxing fans, this is a fight we want to see. Like, I'm really not too big into like following like the politics, but of course, I got my ear to everything that's going on around the world. So it is. I think it is a touchy subject. You don't want to offend anybody in any kind of way, but I got my fingers crossed that this fight still gets made. Maybe it's. I'm not saying that Canelo's gonna save the day or save the world or whatever, but you just never know. This caliber of fight, knowing who it is, who knows? They might look at it and say, look at it as an example and just show that there's really nothing, wrong. It is a sport. I know, some just don't support what's going on, but I would hope that this fight doesn't get canceled.
Yeah, that's basically kind of where I'm at. I'm hoping it doesn't get canceled. I know that there's a lot of thought that went into it, prior, because we kind of talked about it on the prior show. They've been looking at Bivol for a minute, and these tensions have been going on for a while. Unfortunately, it's escalated to the point of where it's at. I'm hoping the fight isn't, not going to happen, but it's something that was thrown out there, and just kind of wanted to, mention it, because I was even thinking from this standpoint, and over critical guy. I was thinking, like, man, how they can even handle the national anthem, like stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think they already said they can't play his national anthem. That's one thing for sure.
Yeah, I think this fight's moving forward regardless, which is a good news. You could tell that it's full steam ahead, and thank goodness it is for the WBA belt, because Bivol is a reigning defending champion and he deserves to defend his belt. Now, I've read that the other sanctioning bodies outside of the WBA are not going to be sanctioning any Russian fighters or any Belarusian fighters. And I'm really concerned about that in the future. There's some good Russian champions, and, Better Beef, of course, comes to mind right now. And it's like, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to strip him? Like, it might not affect this particular fight with Canelo and Bivol coming up, but it could affect the future light heavyweight landscape. Like, are we going to say that this unified champion is not a champion simply because of where he's from? Like, to me, I think that's ridiculous. I think the whole thing's ridiculous in general. Like, boxing has got a lot of stuff wrong. And I feel like these three sanctioning bodies are coming around saying, like, oh, look, we got something right. But no, you didn't get anything right. You're just doing something else that's wrong. Like, a person, isn't represented by their country. I don't know what kind of points they're looking for, but to just exclude them completely, like from the boxing landscape, would just be another huge mistake. And I am concerned though about this kind of turning into like even though Canelo is Mexican, he's not American, but there could be some like anti-Russian propaganda going on if things continue to get chippy in the Ukraine. And in the lead up to this fight, it could be a relevant topic, and I'm sure Bivol's already been, actually, I know he has already been asked about it, and he says he wants peace. Like, I'm sure he does, and that kind of upsets me. Like, I wish that they wouldn't politicize this fight. I mean, but there's a lot of history towards politicizing fights or certain circumstances of fighters like Ali. There, you could go down the list. I forget what said. There was like a German fighter. I forget, like during the Nazi era, who, I mean, that was pretty tense, but they were allowed to fight. Does anybody remember who I'm talking about off the top of my head? Anyways, like it was kind of like when Hitler was saying that, Germans were like the best race, and we had an African American fighter go up and beat him. If anybody knows in the chat, that could let me know. That's gonna be the last time I talk about something I'm not sure about live. Usually Sean bails me out with his good knowledge. You know what I'm saying?
It wasn't Joe Louis.
I think it was
Joe Louis and
Max
Bear?
Schmeling.
Max
Schmeling.
Schmeling. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I mean, we've seen things being politicized before, so I just hope that it doesn't bleed too much into this promotion. I know that both these guys are going to be focused anyways. Like, one of the good things about this fight not being announced until now is like it's not that far away, so we're going to be looking into this fight and breaking it down even more as time goes by.
No, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, brother. I was going to say, like, taking that component out of it, I do think that. Thank you, Lee Groves, on point as always. I'll go in and say, man, this is going to be Canelo's toughest fight, man. And this is really going to be a paradigm shift in his career. Because, I mean, to me, I think if he wins, obviously, let's go for, 175. If not, go down to 168. And there's no shame in that, obviously. He already got some other fights lined up, and he can defend his belts there. But losing to somebody like a Bivol, regardless of where he's from, there's no shame in that because he's one of the top guys, if not the top guy. You can make that argument for sure. So, it's a great fight. I love everything about it.
Sean, I would love for you to tell me how Canelo's going to win this fight because I'm looking for reassurances.
Oh, how he's going to win the fight? All right. So, to me, I think it's just going to be a war of attrition, and I think he's just going to have to go to the body and he's be able to get on the inside. I think that's where he has the advantage with his footwork, even though Bivol is extremely technical and sound and doesn't make a lot of mistakes. But at the same time, as he's adjusting, sometimes he overthinks and leaves himself open for somebody that could be, as strong as Canelo on the inside. And I think that's the one part of his game that is, I want to say flawed, but not as strong as the rest. He's got a quick, snappy jab that's really powerful and can kind of keep Canelo at bay. Basically think about, Caleb Plant, but way better. But at the same time, he does, his inside game is not his strength. I think that's where Canelo can have the advantage. And also I think Canelo's more athletic. And he has good feet and defense too. So I think that's where he's going to be able to get in inside. It's going to be close though. It's going to go to the decision. I could see 7-5, 8-4, man. It's going to be real, razor thin. Don't go to the bathroom, watch every round.
Yeah. And I want to add to that. I want to say he would have to offset Beterbiev as well. I mean, Bivol too, because, Bivol's pretty not basic, but he's real technical. So, everything he's doing, he's basing off of Canelo's first move. So I think Canelo would have to at least offset him a little bit and catch him on counters on the inside.
Yeah.
And we know the big thing, of course, that body work, man. Canelo's really good at being in the pocket and making you miss. So I could see him maybe taking a shot or two, but nothing where he's taking a clean shot because he rolls the punches really well too. We've seen Canelo do that a lot often, roll punches and the body work.
Yeah, that's a great point because Bivol's a good combination puncher too, though. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's I think you're right, George. The counter punching is going to be the difference, man. The counter punching on the inside, that could be the real difference on that fight overall. Who can get the advantage there?
Yeah. And a point you just mentioned too is, I mean, I thought about this earlier actually after watching the press conference when they faced off. I kind of had the same feeling of Mikey Garcia and Errol Spence, right? Mikey Garcia was in a win-win situation no matter what. He went up to fight the bigger guy, the champion that nobody wanted to fight. He wins. It's the biggest praise is holy shit, he beat a bigger guy. He loses. It's well, we kind of expected that to kind of happen because, he is a bigger guy. He's fighting bigger guys. you got a smaller guy coming up. So I don't, but we obviously know the Canelo haters are going to run with this. And, you know, if he was to lose, they'd take this one all the way to the bank and just down talk it. But for us, like true boxing fans, we understand like the situation. We understand that it's a win-win for Canelo no matter what happens at the end of this.
No, man, that's well said, and that's what champions need to do. That's the last thing I know. We want to get into some other topics, but you know, Canelo's kind of important.
Yes, he is. We could
Yes.
talk about this some more, man. This is a big topic, man. And you know what? It's almost like the Super Bowl. It's like when Canelo fights, I mean, even the haters are going to watch, man. This is a big fight for all the boxing fans, man. So it deserves its time. Go ahead, Gringo Cook, brother.
So what I was going to say is, thank you, sir, is to my brother No Paul and to all y'all, George, you Chicano. We've kind of touched on before about maybe Canelo biting off a little bit more than he can chew, and No Paul's kind of alluding to this. Could this be that fight? We're like, man, like kind of Kid Icarus going too close to the sun. No claws, bigger fighter going up to his division. You know, he's established himself. It's not like, I mean, Bivol's been there for a minute and been a champion for a minute and, you know, shown he's a true 175 pounder and if not the top guy. So do all those things going through your mind? And we kind of talked about, hey, there's no shame in losing, but the possibility of losing, does that kind of cross your minds?
Oh, definitely, man. Yeah. It definitely crosses my mind. And all I can say is that, although I do agree with you, George, that Bivol has never had Canelo type problems before. He's never performed under the lights like that. He's never faced anybody like Canelo. I know for sure he's never faced a puncher like Canelo or a counter puncher or somebody with as good a reflexes as Canelo. Also, Canelo's going to be able to dictate the rhythm as well. If you watch Dimitri Bivol fights, like I'm telling you, then he's setting the pace at all times, right? But that's going to be like a mutual negotiation between the two. And I think that Canelo's going to want to naturally slow it down. Although part of me thinks that he needs to get started early. Like he can't just let rounds go by. Okay, check this out. In the Plant and Billy Joe Saunders fights, like I told my casual friends, I said, don't worry about the first like handful of rounds. Canelo's going to eventually walk this dude down. Like, I don't think Canelo can afford to just kind of like let the other guy do his thing, even though don't get me wrong, Canelo's winning early rounds in both those fights too. But I think I could possibly see Bivol stacking up some points ahead of time, especially if he's doing really well, especially if he's outside of range and Canelo can't catch him. Like he's got good footwork, but he's not necessarily a guy who like cuts off the ring. He kind of moves with you now. He's not sitting there trying to chase you anymore. And I think Bivol knows that. And the other thing too is to answer your question, as far as flying too close to the sun, Sean, like I will say this, like Canelo and Eddie Reynoso are very smart people, right? Did they bite off more than they could chew? It's possible, but then it's possible that they also might see something that we're not seeing. Maybe there's a couple tells on the film that they watch and they say, okay, well, we can tell when this guy's coming in because he does this, or, you know, there just could be some natural things. On top of that too, like Bivol's never really truly had to worry about strong counter punching. Canelo's going to be able to punch with the puncher, and I think he has to. Hand speed wise, like, you know, I talked to D-Style about this, and he and I we're going to figure it out, but we're talking about who has the hand speed advantage. I think Canelo's hand speed advantage is a little overrated. Like, I think he's got good hand speed, and he's got like explosive power, but when he's loading up on the power, his output goes down, right? So he's fast, but he's not like super fast, but he can punch with the puncher. I said that in the Caleb Plant fight. I said, well, he's going to hook with the hooker. He's going to take away that hook from Caleb Plant. And sure enough, he did, right? So he's just got to time it and just kind of go on his shield, because I think he can bank, even though it's at 175 pounds, I think he can bank on the fact that he can take Bivol's power shots.
Yeah. First couple of rounds are going to be, of course, for Canelo to take in that data or, you know, to see if he, because, you know, we obviously know Bivol's not going to land his hardest punch in the first round or two, but I think that's where it will be a little bit slow in the beginning, and we've seen it in the past. Canelo's last couple of fights, yeah, he loses a couple of the beginning rounds, but that's what he does. There's no urgency in his fights. He knows what he's doing, and just like with the Plant, we knew it was hook to the body, hook to the head, and that's exactly what he did the whole fight was hook counter, and same thing I think with Bivol. He's gonna see what Bivol has, and I think that's where he's gonna dictate if he's gonna stay on the outside or go to a plan B or a plan C.
And Nancy here says, what injury do we suspect he'll leave Bivol with? Well, Nancy, I was telling the fellas that I want Canelo to hit Bivol with a nice sweet shot to the huevos. Do it like in the third round, Miguel Cotto style, you know, get it done early. You know what I mean? So you can even things out a little bit. And he's earned it. Very clean fighter, has never done it. So I say, well, what the hell, just go for it a little bit.
Oops.
And Lee Grove here, he says here that it's a potential good omen for Canelo. He has an extremely good track record against fighters standing 6 feet or taller. And Bivol, according to BoxRec, is 6 feet tall. I mean, that's a fair point. I mean, Canelo knows how to fight the bigger guys for sure. Like I've already went back and I watched the Danny Jacobs fight just to see what I could glean from that. I need to go back and watch the Kovalev fight. Somebody else referenced that Kovalev fight a little earlier. I think it was Nando, but he was basically making the point that, it was kind of late, but, Kovalev was doing a good job. But I've always maintained that I think that Canelo was just being respectful to Kovalev in a way. You could see that he turns it on towards the end. He didn't want to take any unnecessary risks, and he was very calm. So, like I still need to break down some film, and we're going to be talking about this and breaking down like specific aspects of this fight as we get closer. All right, man. So let's head on to our next subject. Thanks all for talking to us about this one, man. We're really excited about it, and we have some weeks to break it down. So look forward to that. But I want to talk about this upcoming fight that's going down. Chocolatito versus Martinez, who is moving up, and this fight's at 115 pounds this weekend. Pretty exciting little fight for us. George, I know you had a breakdown, man, but please give the Al Chile crew like what you think about this fight and who do you have winning?
It's an exciting fight, and I've been watching other channels. I was watching Kenny's earlier, and I think I was watching Ring IQ, and there was a couple other ones that I've been watching since the weekend. Well, this coming into the fight, this is fight week, and everybody has very good valid points on who would win the fight. I think everybody has a really good argument why Martinez would win the fight, why Chocolatito would win this fight. But for me personally, I feel that experience and ring IQ might be the difference in this one. And one guy brought up that yes, Chocolatito did lose to Sung Revizai a couple years back. And when that happened, for me, watching Chocolatito, to me, I'm like, man, this is it. Like, he had an amazing run. People didn't know who he was, and then all of a sudden, he's pound for pound #1 for about a year or two, and then he gets knocked off. So I thought that was going to be the end, and he actually comes back, puts on some great performances. I think he beat Cuadras. He beat Estrada. I mean, it's it could be up for debate, but I feel like he beat Estrada the last fight. So I wouldn't say he looks like he's aged. I know he's 34. But here it is youth against ring IQ and experience. For me, I think it's Chocolatito that will do this just with his experience, ring IQ, and not to take anything away from Martinez. Martinez is a tough young fighter, and you see he takes it and he dishes it out. His last fight, him and McRoyal were both knocked down in the first round. One guy mentioned it was pretty cool. I was seeing in one of the comments, he called Martinez like the lightweight of Deontay Wilder, a little unorthodox, powerful, one shot could change everything. And that can actually happen here in this fight too against Chocolatito. But Chocolatito, to me, I think he's real technical. And I think he will thrive on Martinez's mistakes. I think Martinez, in order to get the fight going the way he wants it, he's got to land something early and get Chocolatito's respects early. But for me, I had 2 ways that Chocolatito might win, and I thought maybe a late stoppage or a decision for Chocolatito.
Sean, what do you think about this, brother?
Unbelievable fight, man. I said before, this is if not one of the greatest replacement fights of all time. We already had a great replacement fight at 115, which surpassed my expectations. I mean, obviously I was real high on Bam Rodriguez, but man, he came and brought it, and Ray is going to bring it as well. I'm really high on him, but obviously, Chocolatito, Ramon Gonzalez is a legend, and skills pay the bills. So I always kind of lean towards the stronger boxer, even though Martinez is no joke. I mean, he's got power. He's so unorthodox. It's kind of really hard to time, which can create a lot of problems. But at the same time, I think, he's able to, make the adjustments. Chocolatito, take him into deep waters, use his superior footwork in boxing and get the accumulation shots in there and get a stoppage in the 11th round. I'm going Chocolatito, late stoppage.
All right.
I also agree with the crew. I think that Chocolatito has way too much experience for Martinez. and I'm very surprised that they took this fight. I know he has a lot of power, but he also gets hit a lot and he makes a lot of mistakes. So, you know, a lot of people seem to think that Chocolatito's basically too old for this fight, but I don't think so. I think he still has it. You know, proof of that to me was his fight with Gallo Estrada. I mean, you know, that fight could have went either way, and I still think that Chocolatito's going to take this one, probably by like a seventh round stoppage. You know, I'm still gonna roll with. Don't get me wrong, I'm still gonna roll with El Rey Martinez, but at the same time, may the best man win.
That's right, man. And we got respect for Chocolatito. And Calix had a great breakdown on this, and he chimed in here and he says Julio Cesar Martinez works off the high guard. Chocolatito does well against the high guard, works the outside to loosen it up, and then starts to shoot the uppercuts up the middle. I mean, that's a great point. And he also says that Martinez is strong, though. He hits hard with both hands, made McWilliams Arroyo quit in the last fight. Tough break. That was a no contest. Well, I agree with Calix, man. Like one of the things that, as far as like all the factors go, like, and that was a great breakdown from all you guys. The only thing I'd like to add to that is that I just think that Martinez is just chingon, man. Like, I just think that he's going to go in there and he's just going to handle some business. I think that Chocolatito was going to be, I don't want to call him like easy to find, but I mean, these little guys that come at each other, right? I am concerned about the volume, but, he might be tasting some mustard he's just not used to. Like, I think that El Rey has more power than Estrada. That's just me. Like, I'm very impressed with him. Although, the little guys, like, it's not really like my expertise per se, but I'll tell you this, man, like, I'm really looking forward to this one. And like you said, Sean, one of the greatest replacement fights I've seen in a long time. So we can look forward to it. And, I think this was a calculated decision. El Rey is a slight underdog. So Chocolatito is slightly favored, but I am picking the upset. I'm rolling with Martinez.
And there's no shame in that. And I'm gonna go ahead and say it's a beautiful thing because, like, when I mentioned the Ben Rodriguez when he fought Carlos Cuadras, that was in a kind of a passing the baton kind of thing. And we could see the same thing again. I mean, 115 is the best division of boxing, man, pound for pound for me, as far as the top guys are actually fighting each other. Amazing replacement fights. And I know some people were, which I don't know why, but some people were like, oh man, why do we need to have Chocolatito versus El Gallo Estrada 3? I'm shit, like, why not? Why not have 4 or 5? I mean, those fights are amazing, So, but this kind of shows the thing. You can have some new life blood in there. So with El Rey moving up to go to 115, it's like, man, Christmas came early, man. So I'm so excited, and it's a great fight for not just 115 for El Rey, for El Chocolatito, but for boxing in general. I mean, the little guys, people don't, necessarily say those are must-see fights, but right now 115 is so hot. I think this is must-see for anybody, man. If you want to get people in the boxing and, get your friends around, this is the one, brother.
Oh,
And
definitely.
Then, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then the way we've been seeing how these late replacements have been showing up, man. I mean, I wouldn't say this is like an entirely 1 week or 2 week out replacement against Gonzalez, but he replaced Estrada. But we just seen last weekend, we seen Bam Rodriguez. I mean, does the streak continue or does it stop here? I mean, again, I think who wins is us boxing fans, man. This is an amazing fight.
Oh, definitely. And Kenny has chimed in. He's got Martinez winning the fight. And SSC, thanks for joining us. He says, I think El Rey is going to win this fight. Younger, stronger, and he's going to go in 1,000% and will eventually KO or TKO Chocolatito. But really, whoever wins that fight, it's going to be fire, man. I totally agree with that, man. And then, yeah, man, there's a lot of back and forth on this one. Like, it's kind of a coin flip fight in a way. Odds-wise, it's really close. I'd say I'm hearing like maybe like 65% people predicting Chocolatito, but I just think age is a factor, and I learned my lesson with Manny Pacquiao against Ugas, and it's not like Chocolatito is showing like drastic signs, but, Pacquiao really didn't either, you know what I mean? He hasn't been in a fight like this in a while. And, the littler guys, they can't just be super old. I mean, that's what makes Chocolatito special. I mean, when he leaves, that's going to be a shame because he's been around for such a long time. Still has a tremendous record. Some of those, like we're talking about, like maybe he had a controversial loss. It's something we've discussed. But I don't know, man. We'll see how it goes. Does anybody have any final thoughts on this fight before we go to our next subject?
Yeah, I mean, right now, as good as 115 is, I mean, it's just so much talent right now. I mean, obviously you got, Gallo Estrada Ramon Chocolatito, El Rey now by him moving up. Bam moved up. Carlos Cuadras is still a hell of a fighter. And then, Sarang Zafai, the Rat King, is one of the strongest guys in there. I mean, and, then they had the upset, we just had this past weekend at 115. So do you think we're going to get undisputed at 115 anytime soon with all this talent? Man,
I hope so, dude. We'll see, dude. Divisions are slowly starting to be cleaned up every once in a while. But as long as I get I would love to see undisputed, but if I get like a Ring Magazine unified champion, I'll consider him the guy, but I mean, you're right, man. It's loaded. And, I'm starting to really appreciate seeing those fights. So, I got to thank everybody who's kind of dragged me along the way, because now I find myself paying more attention. And I wish I could speak more to the depth of 115, but, I'm going to be more knowledgeable as time goes by, because I'm really enjoying those fights.
Yeah, and this is an example to me of the fans win because, granted, unless it's like a Sarang Zafai beatdown for, Chocolatito, but, even if he does lose, to me, it still keeps the possibility of a third fight with Gallo Estrada, right? To me, completely, it's the fight that people still want to see. And then if Ray looks amazing, that's going to open up a possibility with him and Bam, two young guns going at it. Imagine that fight.
Man.
So it's just so many possibilities. And bro, there's a lot of people that, they, for whatever reason, they haven't truly embraced the lower divisions, but that's where the fights are happening, man. Lower divisions, and the women want the smoke, up so much, but the lower divisions, that's where the magic's happening, brother.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah. And the Shoe Shine is here. Dave, y'all need to check out the Shoe Shine if you don't know about them, man. One of my favorite shows. Remy's here, man. Thanks so much for joining us. And then Nando makes a good point that Bam Rios is lurking. All right, man. Well, hey, dude, I want to get into this next subject because, everybody's been talking about it. Things have cooled down. I listened to what Sean had to say about this, and I kind of like his vibe. I got this idea that, he's trying to temper when people call this fight a robbery. That's the inclination I got, that he wanted to speak his mind a little bit more. But now he's at El Chile, can really talk about how he feels. You know what I mean? And especially now that, the later people are starting to come in and go, whoa, maybe this wasn't a robbery. Or maybe it was. Like, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You tell me what you think about this. Was this fight a robbery? I'm talking about Taylor versus Cattterall, the undisputed champion. Is he still undisputed? Or do you defend the uncrowned king? To whom do you swear fealty to?
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're going there.
Did you like that?
Yeah, that was a good segue. I should have saw it coming, but of course I guess kind of like Taylor didn't see the overhand lefts coming by Jack Cattterall. But speaking of Jack Cattterall, he had a good game plan. Not my favorite style, but an effective style. And sometimes you just have those fighters like that just don't mesh well. And you kept hearing, I don't want to say excuses, but things that were said by Taylor in his camp, like it was tough fighting at home, which is kind of weird. I mean, him fighting at home actually helped him. Fighting at 140 has been difficult, making the weight. Even though he was complimented to his new nutritionist, he was also saying the challenges he had of making the weight, and he looked really gaunt and kind of weight drained. But as far as the fight, he didn't even throw 400 punches. He looked really kind of one-dimensional. I think that was the most disappointing thing, is like he was over feinting. This is one thing that I don't think gets said enough. And, I apologize for any trainers out there, but I think this is an example of somebody that's over analyzing in their corner with like Ben Davidson, because he was looking for the perfect shots and over feinting instead of just going out there and trusting his chin in his offense, because he's a great offensive fighter. And I think that he allowed himself to get caught up in corners. And he just kept getting set up by that overhand left again and again. And that's the 1-2 simple combination. He couldn't get out the way. So I did see him losing that fight. I don't see it as a robbery, though, from the standpoint of it was so close. I could see it kind of going one way to the other, or a draw from that standpoint. But, how I scored it, especially with the two deductions by the referee, it kind of left a kind of weird taste in my mouth. But I believe I scored it like giving it 1 point advantage to Cattterall. But a win is a win. So a win is a win, but it wasn't quite a robbery. But what I would like to see, I'm sure no one else would but me, is I would like to see a rematch, but a rematch at 147 without the belts in a neutral location. That way everybody wins. Playing the political game there. I can see
top of the helicopter pad on.
Yeah, and then Dubai, there's no real advantage there. The belts aren't on the line. He wants to move up to 147, that being Josh Taylor anyway, and Cattterall gets another payday. We all win, and he gets to vet a demon. If he can't beat him, he can't beat him. A lot of people can't beat certain fighters. We just talked about Sarung Safai. To me, is not as good as Chocolatito, but Chocolatito can't beat Sarung Safai. Certain people just can't beat certain fighters. Jack Cattterall might be his kryptonite. A robbery, no.
No ball. What do you think, man?
I didn't really score the fight, but I didn't think it was really a robbery. I noticed that the announcers were all rolling with Cattterall. They were saying that he was winning or whatever, but at the same time, I noticed that Josh Taylor was the one actively trying to do most of the work in there, and I did see that he's really dirty, but I didn't really think it was a robbery. I enjoyed the fight, and I noticed that he had kind of like a southpaw shell, that was really effective, and it was interesting, and he was able to shoot off the jab. But at the same time, I didn't really see him too active in the fight. He's just defending, letting, Josh Taylor do all the work. And, if you really want to win a fight like of this magnitude, you got to do a little more, in my opinion.
Hey, man, I'm there with you. Nando and I have been on the same page. I've seen them chatting, and he says no robbery. Cattterall won, but didn't take enough initiative. Yeah, man, I got to say, he didn't close out the round strong. We've been scoring controversial fights, and I mean, you have to finish strong. This isn't anything new. Okay, you're going to where the guy's the unified undisputed champion in his hometown, the cash cow, right? The guy who's pretty famous is in line to possibly fight Crawford, right? You're not just going to go in there and get the benefit of the doubt. Although I do think that he got the benefit of the doubt in a certain regard. I think that sometimes, we get caught up in watching a fight when it's live, and we see a guy who should be getting wiped out, and the odds were super wide for this fight. Wide, right?
18-1.
Yeah, dude, and I got a story about that here in a second, but I'm telling you, man, when you see somebody start carrying themselves well and it's like a 50-50 fight, you're kind of watching it with shock and energy, so I did have Cattterall winning when I watched it initially, and I still had Cattterall winning. So, I scored it 113, 112 for Cattterall, but I thought it was a fairly close fight. I thought there was a lot of decent work that Josh Taylor was doing. He wasn't doing what he should have done, and I think that was shocking. But also, I don't necessarily believe the CompuBox numbers that I'm seeing. There's a discrepancy between Sky Sports and ESPN and how they've ranked their CompuBox, so I'm just going to go with what I see. And I'll tell you this, man, it was kind of an ugly fight. It was kind of formulaic. If you've seen a few rounds, you've probably seen the rest of them. I didn't care for the holding. I felt like the holding was excessive, and I kind of thought that the YTBC in general was just in agreement that, holding's no good, but all of a sudden now is good inside fighting. And hey, man, you can't fight on the inside, clinch them up, and it's like, I guess, obviously you take what the ref gives you, but I didn't care for all that holding. I thought it was a bit excessive and it ruined the flow of the fight. Also, I thought Taylor was landing some really good body shots. On top of that too, I felt like you could see this here, he kept turning his head, maybe there was some shots to the back that maybe could be illegal, but he was turning around too much. On top of that too, when the ref would break them up, the guy would take forever to turn around, so I don't know, man, he didn't act like a champion, in my opinion. He didn't take it from the champ like he should have. And I know we don't necessarily agree with that, but all I'm saying is I don't consider it to be a robbery. I thought it was pretty close. I didn't see it to be one-sided. If you listen to the corner, Cattterall was being told to walk forward, to take it to him. He was, and Taylor was the one on the front foot most of that fight, and that doesn't tell everything, but I think that indicates that Taylor was doing what he wanted at times as well. This was not a one-sided fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely, man. I guess I could say, being on El Chile, rescoring fights, robberies, controversy, it gave me a different perspective with this fight. And I agree, I think, with pretty much everybody. I don't feel like this was a robbery. I think the only thing here is it just takes away from, it was an ugly fight, but the caliber of fight is unification at 140. So it took away from, obviously, these guys' hard work that they put in. Yeah, there was, holding. There was some dirty tactics, but all in all, this was a fight that, was highly praised because of the unification at 140. But again, I don't classify this as a robbery because this could have gone either way. Like, some people thought Taylor won the fight. Most of us thought Cattterall won it, and and some can agree that maybe it was a draw. Um, but I agree too. I think I would love to see this rematch, and not at 140, but at 147. And I mentioned that as well yesterday, that I would love to see that rematch. I think what's surprising is not everybody. I mean, we heard the name Cattterall, maybe we watched highlights, but no one really knew who Cattterall was. And then when we seen this fight, like you said on Chicano, like the shock of not expecting for Cattterall to do what he did in this fight. Like, he dropped Taylor. Like, that was Taylor's first time ever being put down. Was it the pressure? Was it really that Cattterall, put on, a good performance? Was, were those shots set up? But I mean, it was, it did leave a little sour taste in most everybody's mouth because everybody's calling it a robbery, a controversy, whatever it was. But for me, this wasn't really a robbery because it could have went either way. But for me, I had Cattterall winning this one slightly.
No, that's a great point, George. That's another thing too. I kind of want to mention that you said, Chicano, that not trying to get too deep in the rabbit hole when these rescoring thing, but I'll go ahead and vet some demons that I have. One thing that's kind of hard for me, and I'm just on here with my brothers just rescoring some fights that happened a while ago, is expectations, fighting expectations. So when you go into it, you expect something from someone, and either they surpass it, or they meet it, or they don't. And so when that happens, that definitely impacts my scoring, because I didn't know what to expect out of Cattterall. So he's surpassing my expectations because I really didn't have any. So I find myself leaning towards him, even if he's not necessarily truly winning the round clearly. Does that make sense? So I'm finding myself drawn to somebody because of how my expectations sit. So that's something I battle with quite a bit. I don't know about y'all. If I'm just me, then I'll pretend I didn't say it and we'll just move on.
No,
No,
man,
and you know what? You
that's a
make
good point.
total sense on that. I wanted to say, Chicano, that it's just like when there's a guy that's losing almost every round, and all of a sudden he does just a little bit good in one round. Like when you're watching a fight like that, you tend to want to give the guy the round all of a sudden, just because they all of a sudden started doing kind of good, but not paying attention to they lost most of that round. They just happened to do good for a little while, Go ahead, Chicano.
No, I mean, that's a good point. We're going to get into that in a little bit. We're going to discuss whether the term robbery is thrown around too much and why we call fights robberies. But Lee Grove said something that I want to touch base on. He said, the wrong guy won, but not a robbery on the scale of Lewis Holyfield, Tony Taberi, or Paez Dorsey. Well, Lee, I can tell you that the El Chile crew scored those first two fights. I would definitely agree with you on those two. Paez versus Dorsey, bro, that's not on my radar. Thanks for letting me know. Maybe the El Chile crew will take a look regarding that one. But yeah, man, like it's like Nando says, the British refs were awful, allowed too much dirty stuff, and so, I mean, those are great points, does anybody have any final thoughts before we move on to this next subject?
Yeah, first of all, George, you're the man. Thank you for saying the 147. That should be the rematch. Great minds think alike. And also, too, I think Jack Cattterall may be, don't quote me on this, he may be the Vernon Forrest for Josh Taylor. I mean, because honestly, I think the rematch, I can see the same thing happening, brother. But anyway.
Again, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, just check this out. Run PMC recommended Shane Mosley versus Vernon Forrest, and I had not seen either of those fights, man. And so rewarding. And then I went to War Week Radio on Ronnie Shields. He has a weekly show with Ronnie Shields, and I told him, hey, man, I just watched these fights. Vernon Forrest was quite a talent that was fun. And, oh, man, back in the day, Ronnie Shields had all kinds of gumption. He was just talking and talking, man, and in those particular fights. And he really gave a lot of background towards those fights. Very interesting. So I recommend you guys go check that out, man. He kind of takes you down memory lane, and then he talks about the Mayorga fights and what was going on, the circumstances there, man. You know what I mean? No excuses, but he'll tell you what was going on during the training camp, and, but yeah, man, like, I'm excited to see what happens moving forward. And I just want to show you guys this real quick. I made a bet, and this is my new favorite segment. It's called Betting the House with Chicano Profit. Okay. Now imagine my stress on this one, negative 1,200. Okay. And I said, okay, well, Cattterall is just going to lose. So, hell, if you make, 8% a year on stocks, that's considered to be pretty good. So if I can make, roughly around 10% on my money, that's great. So I dropped $600 to win 50. And you can imagine that I was sweating like a motherfucker watching this fight. You know,
Well,
oh man.
Sweat with the Chicano. Well, congratulations to you, sir. That would have been, the segment would have been totally different if it wouldn't have worked out in your favor. And my recommendation to you is if they have a rematch, don't bet.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I know better now, but you know what? I was thinking to myself, like, never again, never again. What were you thinking? You've only seen highlights of Cattterall. You know, I was stressing, bro. I was stressing big time, you know, but I just wanted to show this, you know, because, you know, I like looking at odds, and I don't know, I'm going to figure something out to where, you know, the crew can kind of, I don't know, have some fun looking at odds, maybe play a game or do something, you know, but I mean, I feel like the odds and just online betting is like permeating the sport. You see it everywhere. You see it with like just, you know, on the mat, you know, on the banners, you know, bet online. It's just instant odds, live odds, you know, so it's just something that we're going to take a look at here in the future.
Yeah, and they just legalized it here in Arizona, so it's all over the place, man. The casinos now, they have their own gaming room, and I mean, I haven't seen some of my friends in a while. Like, they're stuck there at the gambling, you know, every type of parlay that you can think of in every sport, from basketball to you name it. They're over there, man, making their money. So it's cool to see.
Yeah, man, that's the way the world's going, brother. So join the wave.
Oh yeah, the casino's got to make their money, man. So of course they're going to give us options, and you know it's kind of fun. And you know, for us being boxing heads, you know, I mean, hell, we're going to get into it. Like, I want to talk about betting on boxing here in the future as a future subject. But the other thing I want to talk about right now is just the idea that we use the word robbery way too much in general. Okay, now here's a list of fights recently that I've heard called to be robberies. Okay, Figueroa, Fulton, Davis versus Cruz, Haney versus Diaz Jr., and Jacobs versus Ryder. And I can tell you that these are people that I've actually collaborated with, panelists who've said that these fights were robberies. Okay. Now, I personally agree with every single one of these fights being classified as a robbery. I want to know what you guys think about this. And then also, just in general, if we use the word robbery too much and if it starts to lose its meaning when there might be a real robbery that comes up, you know, it just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. George, like, what are your thoughts about what I have to say?
I mean, these fights obviously happened pretty recent, so yeah, they're a little bit fresh in my mind. First one, Figueroa and Fulton. I know a lot of people were, well, me and Julian actually, when this happened, we were going back and forth. We almost lost our friendship over it. I'm kidding, but we'll get into debates like that, man. I'm like, hey, as long as you don't disrespect the family, hey, you can call me whatever the hell you want to call me, but keep family, the dog out of it, and the kids out of it, and we'll be all right.
That's right.
But I felt like in the first one, I felt Fulton won. Yeah, Figueroa was the aggressor. He was pushing the pace, but I feel like Fulton was still doing enough to win the rounds. But I guess Davis and Santa Cruz, you know, a lot of people were saying, yeah, Cruz won it. I really wouldn't say Cruz won. I think what he won was the recognition he got, because like they said it too. Cruz, you know, a star was born for Cruz in this one. Haney and Diaz, same thing. I of course had Haney winning. And the last one, I didn't see the last one. What was the last one? Oh, the Jacobs. Oh yeah, Jacobs and Ryder. I remember me and you. I mean, I messaged him like, hey, you know what? I'm going to change my prediction. I'm going to go at Ryder. Which I didn't want to brag about because yeah, Ryder ended up getting the win. But I think Jacobs, yes, early on he put enough rounds in the you know, to put away to gain some of these early rounds, but I guess kind of the inactivity like in the middle of the fight could have swayed some of these judges to, you know, already going into the second half of this fight where they're seeing Ryder trying to make this fight happen, where their mind is already set that, you know what, Ryder's winning the rest of this, and maybe that's why they gave Ryder the rest of the win. But yeah, robbery is a word that gets thrown out there a little too freely, you know, especially when I feel like emotions get involved in this. And, you know, like for us, like, again, you know, going back to being able to score fights with you guys, like I actually could, you know, I guess the word robbery doesn't really come to my vocabulary unless like I really rewatch a fight and I could say, you know what, that fight was a robbery. Close fights, sometimes the right man don't win, but again, it doesn't really necessarily call it a robbery. At least in my opinion, with, you know, when using the word robbery.
Sean, what do you think, brother?
Wow, yeah, this is definitely these some great fights too. Thanks for quick memory down memory lane right here. I enjoyed the hell out of all these fights. But yeah, the word robbery, that's putting things into context and just for consistency for myself. Honestly, if a fight is close, like George was saying, like a 7-5, 8-4 with, maybe some swings, then to me, that's not a robbery. That's a close fight. I mean, it's a good fight and the emotions get involved. The person you wanted to win didn't win, but it doesn't make it a robbery. You feel cheated, because the person you wanted to win didn't get the nod. But as far as robbery, I agree with the comment you kind of had flashing up with Lee Groves. It's kind of something universally understood that it was clearly definitive one way or the other. That's kind of how I lean. But also, what I will say is, because I deal a lot with the local cards and club cards and local fighters and things like that. On a smaller scale, it hurts them a lot more. So I do take those more personal. But even those aren't robbery. That's just me being more emotionally connected to those fights because I know how much is lost and gained by each win and each loss of a fighter. As far as, paydays and opportunities to be on future fights and future cards. So I take those more to heart, but they're not necessarily robberies. It's a clear definitive win that wasn't called out by the judges and the nod wasn't given to the right person, to me. None of these were robberies to me. They were all close fights.
And Nopal, take a look at this list, man. Tell me what you think, bro. Do you see a robbery here at all?
Nah, some of these fights were close. The first one, I think Figueroa took a lot of damage, and he put in a lot of pressure, but still, I wouldn't call that a robbery. The Davis Cruz, I still wouldn't call it a robbery. I think that Cruz did really good, but at the same time, I mean, given the circumstances, I don't think it was a robbery. I mean, and then the Haney Diaz fight, nah, I think it was pretty clear that Haney won that. And then Jacobs Ryder, I didn't actually wasn't able to see that fight. But yeah, a lot of times I think the fans we get really behind a fighter, and you know what I mean. Even if the fight is close, we expect them to get the nod, and that's just not the way things work.
Yeah. And Lee Grove says here, and to me, none of these fights shown on the right here in the center, qualify as robberies. And I have to agree with that, man. I look at these fights and, I think that the right guy won all the fights, except perhaps the Jacobs Ryder fight. Like, I had Jacobs winning. And even though I had bet money on Jacobs, I came out here and I said, that was not a robbery by any stretch of the imagination. And I also wonder, like, why we throw around that word a little bit too much. Like, to me, like, I think there's a couple reasons that it could be going on. Like, one, it could just be because, the guy that you wanted to win didn't win. I think it's also possible that, sometimes people come out and just kind of want to have like that shock value. So that, they get, overly dramatic and call these fights robberies when I'm like, no, they were close. My concern is that, sometimes when we start using the word robbery, like all the time in the YTBC, like, as a group, we're not going to be taken seriously. And, you could see that, like, when there's like, the Sean Porter podcast or other groups, like sometimes they kind of talk about like the other side of things, and they're kind of dismissive. Like, they think we're wacky just when we talk about things like what's a robbery or perhaps like, even Glovegate, they thought it was kind of ridiculous that this conspiracy was going on and they kind of know what's going on. But I mean, they don't interact with us too much, so it's like, I think we as a whole need to be careful about what we classify as robberies. On top of that, there needs to be some conclusive rounds that we could discuss. Like, all these fights that we talk about, robbery this, robbery that. Well, I mean, let's take a look at some rounds. Like, what rounds did you have? I mean, is everybody in agreement? The only time I can remember where people were really taking a hard look at rounds was during the Teofimo Lomachenko fight, and some people were classifying that one as could have gone either way, and people were really proud to bust out their scorecards then, right? But like when there's actually like a controversial fight, very difficult to get the actual scorecards from people and to actually see an open discussion online about whether this particular fight was a robbery and why. How'd you see it? Explain yourself, and that's one of the things about us. Like, we've explained ourselves like in specific rounds or what we were seeing, you know what I mean? And I think we need to see more of that. Like, I need to see like a consensus. That's what I need to see. Like, I want to see like rounds that we can discuss. With this one, like, I didn't necessarily agree with the opening narrative that was going on with it being called a robbery. I think if it's called a robbery, I think that people need to go back and also rewatch it again. Note the swing rounds. If there are plenty of swing rounds in close fights or even fights that weren't close, but I mean, I can always find at least maybe 1 to 2 swing rounds, period, in any fight.
No, definitely. And I think, for me personally, it kind of goes back to what I touched on as far as expectations. Like, you go into a fight and someone may be exceeding your expectations. So you kind of lean towards giving them a round or two or three, and you're like, oh wow, this person did better than I thought, but it doesn't mean they necessarily won. They might have had more moments than you expected. So, those things do kind of factor in. And I think that's a great point, because I learned by being a part of this show, which shout out to us, as far as like understanding ring gentlemanship, as far as from a scoring perspective too. It's not just, just moving forward, but it's truly controlling the round, controlling the action, and, really understanding what these scoring points are. And that's another thing. People are calling things robbery maybe because they put money on it and they lost money, but do they really truly understand how the scoring was awarded? So that's how I look at it. What's their understanding, and are they even understanding what they're saying or what they're looking at?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, we got some upcoming fights that we're going to take a look at. We're going to continue our segment, man. We're closing up the show, but here's some more modern, recent ones that aren't super recent that we will be discussing as one of the opponents has a fight coming up that particular weekend. So it's just, we're going to do it in line. We're going to time some of these. So these are some that you can look forward to. We're going to take a look at Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury 1. I want to know, a lot of people called that one a robbery. I can tell you that off the top of my head, I've never considered this one a robbery, but I've only rewatched it once. So I'm going to take a look and see what I think, with open eyes. I don't have any bias here. I actually really like both fighters, but I'm going to take a look because people are calling it a robbery. But I mean, you get 2 10-8 rounds. Like, it doesn't take that many more rounds to get a draw. What do you guys think off the top of your head on this one?
Yeah, I wouldn't. This wasn't a robbery for me. Even the round that Fury got knocked down on, like, could it be for the first time we could call it a 9-9 round, because it looked like he pretty much dominated the rest of that round after getting knocked down and looked like coming back from death, like the Undertaker. But this wasn't a robbery for me. The only 2 rounds I gave Wilder were the rounds that he got knockdowns in. Other than that, like, I feel like Fury was in total control of this fight. I mean, I think just the excitement of Deontay Wilder, if he was to land that one shot, like, is that it? So I think that's where, I could see, I guess I could see maybe some people were hoping that Wilder could pull it off, but I don't know, man. This wasn't a robbery for me. I thought actually it was a draw, right? Isn't that what happened?
It was a draw.
Yeah, no, I had Fury winning this one.
Yeah, I didn't have that being a robbery as well. And then George brought up a hot button that I saw got Chicano's eyes perked up, the 9-9 round. But hey, I think if there ever was one, I know it wasn't for the Trout Canelo fight, but man, because he did get knocked the hell out and then came back and won that round. I mean, if that's not a 9-9 round, I don't know what is. So I'm looking forward to looking back at it. But off the top of my head, I don't robbery never came to my mind at all. I remember being entertained and liking the fight, but I thought I didn't see it as a robbery.
You know what? I'd be super excited to rescore this fight, man. I just got to say that. It's a fight, fresh on our minds, but, given that Fury's going to fight White, it'd be nice to rescore this. And as far as a robbery, I think that, this reminds me a bit of the Canelo and Triple G. I mean, draw was the fairest thing that they could have gave both guys, and it led to an amazing tiebreaker and, a trilogy. And that was, it was pretty fair to both guys given their backgrounds and everything, their how much pool they have and all that.
Yeah, that's exactly what we got. We got an amazing trilogy out of it,
Definitely.
Now we're talking. Okay.
And now we're talking. Nishan, you have the honors here, brother. What do you think about this one, man?
Well,
people crying robbery right away. What do you think?
Complete robbery now. This is an unbelievable fight, and props to both guys. I know people are anti-Charlo because of Jamal, okay, and the charges were dropped, by the way. But Jamel wants to smoke. Castano is the man. Shout out to Argentina. It's going to be an unbelievable rematch. Hate that they had the injury, had to delay it, but hey, all good things come to those who wait. This was a close fight. I actually gave it to Castano, despite what some people think, Paul. So I had a 7-5 for Castano. It was a hell of a fight, man. Castano, he should have got the nod, but he did not. And respect everybody to my brother Jermell for taking the rematch right away. No wait, no debate. Let's get back to it. And this is a fight where, honestly, and I don't say that too often, where I think that you can just put the judges away. I think that there's going to be a knockout on either side. And I think that it's going to be a fight where there's enough clout with both guys where either man could get stopped and still be the man in my book, no doubt. I got that much respect for him.
Oh yeah, agree with that, man. This was a really, really good fight. I saw this one. Actually, this is what started my whole podcasting. I said, you know what? If there's ever for me to start a podcast episode, this is gonna be the one to do it. And I did. I scored it live. I scored it without the sound, and I scored it like 3 times. And each time, there was swing rounds in there. I want to say there was like a 7, like round 7, round 9, maybe 5, where there was some swing rounds where this could have went either way. I had Castano winning. Jermell, I mean, this is his second rematch. His first one was Tony Harrison. He came out and he was. I feel like it was a really close one in the rematch against Harrison, and you could just see the determination he really wanted. He wanted to win this fight, and there was no other way that it was gonna end that night for him. He was gonna come away with that W. And here, this one, man. I mean, it's still a toss up for me. But I had Castano winning the first fight really close. We'll see what happens. And like you said, good things to come to those who wait. And I know we wanted it to happen soon, but hey, it's going to happen. That's the good thing. He didn't decide to take a tune up or take a whole year off. Like, this was his immediate fight.
Sean, I wanted to ask you specifically about this. What was it that Jermell is saying as far as Castano being hurt? What was he saying about that?
Oh, from what all I understand is like there's full disclosure that he believes him. There's no questioning about anything. There have been really good negotiations on both sides. I mean, originally, I don't know if people remember, but the fight was going to be in Houston, and all people hated that. But they moved it to LA, I believe, right? It's going to be in Cali,
Right.
So that was because Castano's team wanted that. So they're working with them. If there's been anything said, it wasn't anything that was on my radar. They're just Jermell just wants to prove that he's the man, and and Castano wants the same thing, and respect to both guys. And I just hope they both go into there healthy, so there's no excuses. I just want an unbelievable fight, and I think we're definitely going to get it. I think that's another thing too. I think this is a good example, not to keep talking about what I said, but that we all experienced as far as scoring. This is the ultimate expectation fight, because being real, man, a lot of these Argentine fighters, we don't really see them, man. We know that they're tough when we see them, right? But I didn't see a lot of, because I'm not gonna lie, and I love boxing, and I look at stuff on YouTube and I dig deep. I didn't see a lot on him, so seeing him fight, he really exceeded my expectations. His power, his ferocity, his pressure. I mean, he was just. But it wasn't just his expectations that were exceeded for me to score him. He was winning those rounds, so there was that difference there too. But yeah, but to your point, Paul, I didn't hear anything as far as there being any questioning if he's actually hurt or not. They both want the fight, and I believe the fight's going to happen. They've been pretty accommodating on both sides.
And you know what? I wanted to also say that as fans, I think we're getting too Nazi about all this stuff, we should just sit back and enjoy these fights. Like, for example, I think the universal scorecard was about 8-4, for Castano, but nevertheless, they decided to make it a draw, and maybe as fans, we're actually winning on this, because now we get to see the rematch, even though right now we might have to wait a little bit, but let's try to look at the positive in all this.
Oh yeah. And as far as how I saw it, I've never gone back to rescore this particular fight, but I felt like Castano won. But Jermell Charlo, who I'm a big fan of, man, he did what he had to do at the end, man. I felt like he was closing strong. Whether he won all those rounds towards the end, that's another story. But I feel like Jermell Charlo made a good account of himself, and like you said, Sean, this guy's marching right back in to get this fight. So I'm looking forward to this one. I'll tell you that. And here's another one we're going to be taking a look at on the eve of Valdez versus Shakur Stevenson. This one has been noted as a robbery. Valdez versus Conceição. And the El Chile crew was rolling at the time, but it was a bit of a different lineup, but we kind of spot checked it. But I think maybe we should really take a look at it as we get closer. Off the top of your head, does anybody feel that this one was a robbery?
Close fight, not a robbery. Very enjoyable. But there was so much. There was a whole herbal tea thing going around during that fight. They were fighting outdoors. I remember, of course, Xander was on the undercard, so they had like a lot of good undercard fights on that. It was Arizona. George, your background, right?
I was there. Yeah, we went to go see. We saw that. Me and Julian saw it live.
Oh, okay.
It was, man. It was a sick event. Like Teofimo was in the crowd. He was with his dad interacting. Gay Flores, that was the night he got his first loss too. Xander Zayas was fought. Who else fought on that card? But it was all in all it was, man. I hope they bring fights back again to that casino at least, once a year, because I mean we definitely showed out there to support Valdez, because Valdez is from this area over here, Sonora. But I was a little bit drunk watching it live, and it is different. It is completely different watching a fight live compared to TV, because at least you get the instant replay and you don't have thousands of people in your ear screaming and drinks being passed around. But at the moment, like with the crowd, interacting with the crowd, it was mixed. There were some people who were like, man, that was a robbery. Some people were like, well, Conceição didn't close the fight out like he should have. If he would have continued to fight from 6th round on to the very end, he would have had the win. But who knows? I mean, I don't know. To me, it was very close. I hate, at least for this one, I hate to like try to say who I thought won. I definitely would say it was really close. On any given night, it could have been Conceição maybe by a round, or maybe Valdez by 1 round. But I mean, I think the majority of everybody's decision, or what everybody thought, they thought Valdez did not win this fight.
Yeah.
No, Paul, what do you think, man?
I saw this fight on my phone at work, and I was like constantly pausing it. But yeah, I also kind of thought it was really close, and if they would have gave it to Conceição, I would have had no objection. But Valdez ended up getting the win. So what can we do about that? Robbery. I mean, I think there's enough arguments to say it's not a robbery, but I mean, like I said, I actually thought that Conceição probably won it by like 1 round. But it would be a nice fight to rescore, so we could see what we all think, whether it's a robbery or not.
Oh yeah, we're gonna take a look. And George, dude, I almost went to this fight, but dude, all the primo seats were sold right away, so I decided not to make the venture to Tucson. But I just wanted to ask you real quick, like,
Okay.
it's like in an amphitheater, right? That
Yeah,
fight, and I wanted to know like how the viewing was for people.
There was really no bad seat there. So where the ring, or even like when you're there for a concert, of course it's amphitheater, so it's level. Like here's the stage, and the seating, is kind of this way, so you do get a pretty good view of it. Yeah, man, I do hope that they do bring more fights out here. And actually, back to the whole herbal tea thing, me and Julian, we actually kind of did our own little investigating, and we looked into it. And I don't know, I still haven't really looked into it myself, but Julian said he actually found that Phetermine herbal tea was actually, you can actually purchase it online. I can't remember the name of the website, but again, that was one of our very first episodes. I want to say maybe like our 3rd or 4th episode. It's out on Anchor. I mean, if you guys want to try to catch it, we talk about the Herbalife thing. I mean, the herbal tea being the Phetermine, and then also got into the whole Mayweather, the testing positive, or actually having his testosterone levels lower than normal. So like this was an interview that Max Kellerman did, and I kind of broke that down too, like him coming out saying, you know what, he tested twice for testosterone, and those levels actually came below normal, which indicates some kind of tampering or maybe some kind of masking agent. But I don't want to get into that here. But if you guys want to go ahead and check out that episode, it's on Anchor. You can find it, Off the Ropes Boxing MMA, and we got into the whole herbal tea thing too.
Will do, brother.
Yeah, man, for
George
sure.
teaching.
Yeah, that was some good info. And we're going to check out the big drama show in the lead up to the Golovkin versus Murata fight. A lot of people called this one a robbery too. Does anybody have any opinions on this one?
Extremely entertaining, very good fight. Initially when I saw it, I watched it twice. I gave it to Triple G because I'm biased as hell the first time, but without alcohol, I had Derevchenko winning by 2 rounds. Very good fight. Extremely, a good fight. Triple G started off strong, thought he was going to just run through Derevchenko, but Derevchenko is one of those guys where I know you mentioned this too, Chicano. You kind of mentioned about these lovable losers where like you get props for no, hold up, let me explain. Basically guys that they don't win as far as in the score column and boxing rec, but you get respect for their respectable wins on the column because they're tough guys. You were also talking about Gabe Rosado, you know, one of those guys where they have a lot of losses. I mean, I think at this point, this was like Derevchenko's second loss in a row, right? Or like on his way to his, because after this, he lost to Charlo and then he lost again. So, yeah. But yeah, but overall, without alcohol, I had Derevchenko winning, but I'd love to look at it again. It was an entertaining fight.
Yeah, I need to look at this one again too, you know, because I've scored it twice and I had different scorecards, you know, and contrary to popular belief, I like Triple G too, and I think I was maybe kind of biased towards Triple G possibly when scoring this, man. So I got to take another look. And the Al Chile crew's going to, man. Anybody have any final thoughts on this one before we move on?
No, I'm same with me. That was a fight that I was watching definitely on my iPhone 12 mini, so it wasn't too big of a screen to watch this fight. I would love to go back and see this one again. I'm the same too. Like I'm a fan of boxing. I've always liked Triple G style, and maybe I was a little bit biased, you know, and maybe giving the rounds to him, but it wasn't a fight that I wanted to try to get an opinion or thought who won. I just was there to watch the boxing. So,
oh yeah, and
good to see it again.
I know I was mad at hell when you know, Derevchenko had his momentum going. He was going to the body, and then I think the ref gets in the way or something like that. I was like, what the heck is up with that? You know?
No, yeah, this is definitely one of those fights where you have one of those involved referees, kind of like we just saw with the Taylor Cattterall fight. So that's a good call out. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, and last but not least, and we're not going to discuss this. We're going to seal it for our special rescores, but we are also going to take a look at, and I think that we should save this now because we were going to do it before the Canelo fight, but since there might be a trilogy, maybe we could save it until after Cinco de Mayo weekend so we can take a fresh look at the trilogy as we lead up into that September fight. Canelo Golovkin 1, very controversial. Canelo Triple G 2, also very controversial, and y'all can look forward to that, but we're not going to say anything right now. Not that we're scared of that conversation, all right? But hey, man, it's time to go to our controversial rescore now. We're looking at Jose Luis Ramirez versus Pernell Whitaker. Now, I didn't get a chance to give Sean the correct information, so he's just going to listen as a spectator, hear what we have to say, and then he's going to score this fight and bring us a fresh scorecard so we can add it to the Al Chile register and see if it's classified as a robbery or not. But this took place in France. Jose Luis Ramirez was managed out of France, and this was Whitaker's first championship fight. And this was also a fight that was going to take place. And then afterwards, it was already arranged for Jose Luis Ramirez to fight Julio Cesar Chavez. Okay, so there was some prearrangement going on with the idea that Ramirez would win. So this fight took place in France. So let's take a look at it. George, let's start with you, man. Have you ever seen this fight before? And tell us what you thought about the fight and how you had it.
No, I did not see this. This fight was in 1988. I was probably 5 years old, so I wasn't really introduced to boxing other than, you know, my dad trying to teach me how to box a little bit at 5. But rewatching this, you know, I've always known how good Pernell Whitaker was, but watching it as an adult with better eyes of boxing, like, man, I respected him. It gives me so much more. I give him so much more respect because I think he truly was one of the best defensive fighters of all time. And I know it's a debate. Some say Floyd, some say Pernell. Like for me, I feel like it's Pernell Whitaker, and not that I'm being biased or anything, but that's just my opinion. But I mean, who they had winning in this fight, man, that was not fair. I could probably see why a couple angles that going into it. Hometown, and maybe just if you listen to the commentating, you know, they're already saying that this fight was about pretty much even going into like the 6th round, 7th round. I didn't even see it even going into the middle fight. I mean, into the middle rounds. And I think it's because, you know, Pernell Whitaker, maybe George of 2002 or 2001 would have said Whitaker was running, but again, watching it with better eyes and understanding boxing a lot more. This was not running. This was circling, using, side to side movement, using every inch of that ring. And that's what the ring is there for, right? To use it into your advantage. He was setting up a lot of great shots. I had Pernell Whitaker winning the first 8 rounds, with rounds 6, 7, 9, and 12 as the swing rounds. But you can definitely see where the tide started to change halfway through, where Ramirez was starting to figure out, cut the ring off a little bit. He was able to catch Whitaker with some good left hands, right hooks. And it's, of course, because Whitaker was slowing down a little bit, but they definitely had the wrong guy winning. My final score was 9-3 with 2 of the 3 swing rounds going to Pernell. One of the swing rounds that I had for Ramirez was round number 9, where you see, him having better success with the combinations, and Pernell Whitaker kind of holding on a little bit. But I feel like it was a robbery because this was 9-3. There wasn't 7-5 or a toss up to me. This I feel like this was definitely a robbery. 9-3 for Pernell Whitaker.
All right. So George classifies this one as a certified robbery. Nopal, tell us what you think about this fight, man.
Yeah, you know what? Everybody knows I'm not the guy to score these Whitaker fights. I'm just not, man. And so I wanted to say that before I even start. So I gave Whitaker the first round. I also gave him round 5, and then I gave him round 9, and then I gave him 11 and 12. So basically the championship round. So I scored it 7-5 Ramirez, I guess. Yeah, that's how I scored it.
So Nopal had Ramirez winning this fight, so not a robbery. And I'll tell you guys what I thought. And Lee makes a good point here. He says the wrong guy won, but Whitaker did fade in the second half. But this is what I wanted to highlight. He says, in my experience, home ring advantage is worth 3 points on the scorecards. I mean, hey, Pernell Whitaker, I have to say, dude, this is the earliest fight I've seen of Pernell Whitaker. So we've seen later fights of his, but I've not seen him fight this young. He was 23 years old. Entertaining fight to watch in some aspects. It's interesting to see what a prime, as far as youthful prime. He's so well rounded already. Like the guy's great. There's no doubt about it. And I have a lot of respect for Pernell Whitaker. One of the things that I used to say about Pernell Whitaker, and this was in defense of saying that Canelo beat Lara, as I was saying, well, Whitaker, he had the good sense to kind of go on the front foot and to show his aggression at times too. Now, that was really absent in this fight. Like, I've never seen Pernell Whitaker literally turn his back and literally run around. He was doing like a Rigondeaux job, in my opinion. And George, I certainly respect what you have to say. Okay, so but I just got to speak what I saw. You know what I mean? And to me, I felt like he was running a lot of this fight. He was fighting very negatively. He was not engaging. And the commentary was classifying it as like, oh, this is sweet science, fighting on the outside. I think that circling and possibly resetting every once in a while, getting out and resetting, that's fighting on the outside. Like just running around and not engaging and pot shotting. To me, that's not engagement. Although I did have Pernell Whitaker winning this fight 7-5. I gave Whitaker rounds 1, 2, 4, 5, 9, and 12. But there were enough swing rounds in my mind to conceivably give Ramirez this fight. It was a difficult fight for me to watch. I'll have to say, like, it was probably the worst fight that I've seen outside, as far as like all these rescores goes. Like, it's probably the worst fight that I've seen outside of perhaps the Valuev versus Holyfield fight. Very little engagement. And it was frustrating too. It was a frustrating fight to watch. Sean, I have to say, like, if you thought that the Lara fight was frustrating to watch, then my guess is you're going to find this one frustrating as well. There just wasn't enough for me to say, oh, this was a clear robbery. Like, and I think this was a lesson well earned by Pernell Whitaker. Like he was being coached by Lou Duval, like, oh, you're doing great. And then he needed to bank the rounds at the end. But, in my opinion, like he just wasn't closing strong. Although you could see Pernell was a superior fighter. He had flashes of superiority. And you could tell he was able to shoot off shots with mustard, but like he just didn't take any unnecessary risks. He didn't punch any more than he absolutely had to. And he put himself at risk. Like I had Pernell Whitaker winning this fight. But I mean, to call it a robbery, I mean, he did it to himself. Like he was going to learn this lesson sooner or later. Like I said, I've never seen him fight this negatively, in my opinion. Like in any other fights that are controversial, the Chavez fight, the De La Hoya fight, he's not running around like that. This is a fight where he runs around, he learns a lesson, and he fixes it, in my opinion. So I do not classify this one as a robbery. So Sean, it's up to you, man. Like, you're gonna have to go and take a look at this fight
Oh man,
and see if you can turn the tide, because right now it's 2-1. You know what I mean? And you're gonna have to let us know what you think about this one. And
no, definitely. And no, you guys actually gave me a lot of food for thought as far as like what you thought looking into the fight and your takeaways from the fight. And I actually am looking forward to the fight. And not only that, I know that they actually did have a rematch. And you said something real key, Chicano, as far as like it was it's almost like a paradigm as far as his career, because he learned that the quote unquote, in and out pot shot and then run around or circle out, and then because you did see the shift as far as his style, as far as I like the fact that he was very defensive, but he could fight in the pocket, like against Chavez. Like that was a great example. And I know that wasn't Nepal's favorite fight either, but at least with that fight, what I remember when we scored that fight is, man, Sweet Pea was getting the advantage in some of those exchanges on the inside. Like he wasn't backing out. Like he would reset a lot, which, not everybody appreciates, but I wouldn't say that was running at all. That was basically just, shifting and going lateral and, going in and outside the pocket. So I'm interested to see this and score it and then be the deciding factor. I think that's only just right. And I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to the rematch as well, because there's obviously an adjustment made,
Yeah.
But it's weird because the takeaways you guys have from it, and also reading online, like people are really, really feel like this is a robbery, just to throw that out there, for various reasons. And I think it also may be a little bit of what y'all all said as far as the superiority Pernell Whitaker is able to display at times, and that maybe carry over because there's such little action, as far as like, oh, well, that was enough for the round, where maybe it wasn't. So I'm actually looking forward to it. So you did not discourage me at all, guys. I'm looking forward to this. Can't stop me.
And you
Put
know
you on
what?
the spot, man. Sorry.
The broadcast that I was watching, I mean, they had the first 6 rounds, they had it 5 rounds to 1. So, that could also lead people to everybody say that it's a robbery, but at the same time, just to be clear, we just need one more Pernell card and it's a robbery, Chicano.
that's right. If it's 50% of the panel, then boom, we'll just classify it as a certified El Chile robbery. So Sean's got to come through, and all, I want to say this, Sean, like everything that you said, I agree with. Like I've said that, like, he was dangerous on the inside, could stay on the inside, and then would leave when he wanted to. Like, I didn't see that kind of stuff here. Also, he didn't take any front foot action. He just chose to make some moves at times. But to me, like, and on top of that too, like, I have to say this, like, I felt, I'll be honest, like, I felt like Ramirez was tagging him clean sometimes, although, Whitaker had like a solid chin. So it kind of looked like it didn't even really hit him, because he was just not really show any type of pain, right? Or wincing or anything like that. But he was getting hit flush multiple times on the way out. Like I said, I had Whitaker winning this fight. I wouldn't argue with anybody who maybe called it a robbery, but like, I wouldn't call it a robbery. This fight was not entertaining. I'm glad Whitaker corrected it so that I, was able to give him the respect that he deserves in those Chavez and De La Hoya fights.
Man, it's weird. Like, it's like you guys are kind of talking and saying negative things, but it's getting me more hyped to watch it. Like
you better watch it, Gringo.
No, I'm gonna watch the right fight. I mean, I don't know who I was watching. I was looking for the Dominguez fight or something. I was looking for Martinez. I was looking for the Martinez fight that never happened.
I know, right? Plus, like I said, the good news is you get to see Luduva lose his shit afterwards. A younger Luduva,
Yeah, looking forward to that.
I felt bad for Pernell though, man. He winced in pain and then fell on the floor and was just like, man, he was just shocked, kind of hit him. But he learned his lesson. So you won't see him fight that negatively ever again, in my opinion, Sean. So please let us know what you have to say, and then we're going to update everybody on Twitter and in the Discord, the HCP Discord. But hey, this is Nopal as he's scoring the Pernell Whitaker fight. That's Nopal. Poor Nopal. You know what I mean? But bro, I want to thank you so much, Nopal, for powering through, bro. I know you didn't like that one. You know what I mean? But at least you're honest about how you feel, man. And that's all we can do, is we can all just be honest, and we can all respect each other's opinions. But Nopal, since you went through it and you scored it like a good friend, man, I want you to take a look at this week's controversial fight options and tell us what we're going to do next. So we got Carlos Zarate versus Lupe Pintor. We haven't done that one at 118. Sergio Martinez versus Martin Murray, which I think would be an important one to take a look at because I want to see if that lineal line holds. Some people say he got a gift there. George Foreman versus Shannon Briggs. That one, I'm very interested in that one. A lot of people say that was a robbery. And if George Foreman didn't get the benefit of the doubt as an old man, like, I want to know about that. And then we got Muhammad Ali. And like I said, if we're kind of stalling on that one because we're trying to pay him the great respect that he deserves. But if he is the GOAT, we need to take a look at that one too. So Nopal, like, what do you think, man?
So I just wanted to say with Muhammad Ali, we all know he's the greatest anyways. He took some really big fights sometimes that he didn't have to take. And that just adds to one of the reasons why he's one of the greatest, the GOAT, basically. So
Absolutely.
You know what? Let's watch that Muhammad Ali versus Ken Norton 3.
All right, that sounds good, bro. If you don't mind, I'd like to make a recommendation that we watch the Jimmy Young one first because that was the earlier robbery. Would you be okay with that, Nopal?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, man, we're going to see if the great Muhammad Ali was given gifts as well. We got to do it. Sean, I know it sucks, man. We kind of talked about it kind of being like, sacrilege, but I'm going to take a little look at this one, man. I've never seen it. Has anybody here seen it?
No.
Honestly, no. I've only heard about it, but looking forward to breaking it down with you guys and seeing and uncovering the truth. That's what we do here, right? Uncover the truth and vet those demons. So let's do it.
That's right, man. And who knows? This could be a lesson that even the greatest after time, like their gift decisions just kind of get forgotten about, and there's less scandal as time goes by. So maybe Canelo will be like in the clear, like in maybe 10 years or so.
And what's really cool about seeing these fights, rewatching them again, is you get to see the perspective of not just what the commentating, because obviously the commentating can be biased, but what they were looking for in these scores again. So it's just it feels like, I guess, as the centuries go on or the generations go on, like you could definitely see what each what was just different in the fighters, what they were scoring. And to go back to see that Muhammad Ali one, that would be pretty neat to see, man, because that was before I know it was definitely before my time, I'm sure.
Yeah, man. And we got to take a look at how they score too, because I was telling Sean in an earlier episode that depending on the state, they had different ways of scoring rounds. It wasn't like 10-9 back in always like in the 70s. So we got to take a look at that one. And Run PMC's chiming in saying, Laura, okay, bro. Hey, dude, you know what? Just so you know, Run PMC, like you weren't here, and Nopal and I are holding strong, calling the Whitaker fight versus Ramirez not a robbery. We're just being stubborn. So you might need to chime in with a scorecard and correct that one. So yeah, man, we're going to take a look at that one. Does anybody have any final thoughts before we take off?
It's been a great show, man. George, it's been a pleasure, brother. Glad to be back with you guys. I've hated not to be able to be on with you guys. Everybody tuned in. Thank you guys so much for the support. It's only the beginning. So many fights to rescore and just great boxing to talk about, man. I mean, we got these great fights that we had. April's going to be phenomenal. And, love us, hate us, debate us, man. El Chile is here to stay. And it's only just the beginning of a great time of boxing talk. So we appreciate it and much love to everybody.
Well said, man. Everybody have a great night. Take care.